The bitter December wind swept across the snow-covered steps of the Mitchell mansion, carrying with it the sound of a child's desperate sobs. 7-year-old Olivia Mitchell knelt on the frozen concrete, her thin shoulders shaking as she clutched her 10-month-old brother Lucas to her chest. A small, worn suitcase lay toppled beside her, its meager contents spilling onto the snow. A baby bottle rolled across the driveway, leaving a trail in the fresh powder. From the doorway above, Cassandra Mitchell stood with perfect posture, her elegant cashmere coat belted tightly at the waist, blonde hair swept into an immaculate chignon. At 35, she was still strikingly beautiful, though the cold fury twisting her features marred her perfection. "Thief," Cassandra's voice cut through the winter air, sharp as an icicle. $1 is enough to prove the thieving blood in you. Your father isn't here to protect you anymore. Olivia's tears fell faster, melting small circles in the snow beneath her. "I didn't take it. I promise I didn't." The baby in her arms stirred, his cries growing louder in the frigid air. Cassandra's face hardened further at the sound. "That boy is not my responsibility. Take him and go." The scene froze in that moment of cruelty, a tableau of abandonment against the pristine white landscape. Then came the sound of footsteps crunching through snow. A tall figure appeared at the iron gate, briefcase in hand, his broad shoulders squared against the wind. Robert Hughes stood motionless, taking in the scene before him. At 58, he carried himself with the unmistakable authority of a man accustomed to command. Silver threaded his dark hair at the temples, and deep lines were etched around his eyes, the marks of both success and sorrow. As CEO of Hughes Construction, he had built skyscrapers across the country, but nothing had prepared him for the foundation-shaking sight before him. "That's enough." His voice wasn't raised, but it carried the weight of stone. Cassandra's head snapped toward him, her expression flickering between surprise and annoyance. "Robert, this doesn't concern you." Robert's gaze moved from Cassandra to the children on the steps. The girl's thin coat inadequate against the winter cold, the baby's face red from crying, and the bitter air. A muscle tightened in his jaw as he set down his briefcase and walked toward them. "If you throw these children out, you'll lose more than just them." Each word felt deliberate and heavy in the winter stillness. Cassandra's laugh was brittle. "Are you threatening me, Robert? In my own home?" "This is Michael Mitchell's home." Robert knelt beside Olivia, gently placing his coat around her shoulders. The girl looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "And these are Michael Mitchell's children." The name of their father hung in the air between them, invoking the presence of the man whose funeral had been held just 2 weeks prior. Michael Mitchell, Robert's closest friend and business partner for over 20 years. "Uncle Robert?" Olivia's voice was small, uncertain. Robert smiled at the title, not his by blood, but by the deeper bond of friendship and trust. "It's okay now, Olivia. I'm here." He lifted Lucas from her arms, cradling the baby against his chest with surprising gentleness for hands that had spent decades reviewing blueprints and shaking on million-dollar deals. The infant's cries softened to hiccuping sobs. "You can't take them," Cassandra snapped. "I'm their legal guardian." "We'll see about that." Robert helped Olivia to her feet. "Pack a bag for yourself and Lucas. You're coming with me tonight." As he guided Olivia back up the steps, Cassandra blocked their path, her perfume a cloud of expensive roses in the winter air. "You have no right," she hissed, low enough that only Robert could hear. "These children and everything in this house belong to me now." Robert leaned closer, his voice equally quiet but edged with steel. "Michael made me promise to protect them if anything happened to him. And unlike you, I keep my promises." Something flickered in Cassandra's eyes. Fear, perhaps, but it was quickly masked by cold calculation. She stepped aside, a tight smile fixed on her face as neighbors peered curiously from adjacent properties. "Of course they can visit with their godfather," she said loudly for the benefit of watching eyes. "Just bring them back tomorrow." Robert's reply was equally public but carried a different weight. "We'll discuss their future tomorrow, with lawyers present." Inside the house, Olivia moved quickly, gathering essentials with the efficiency of a child accustomed to caring for herself and her brother. Robert noticed how she packed Lucas's things first: formula, diapers, the worn stuffed rabbit he clutched while sleeping. Her own belongings were an afterthought, hastily stuffed into the small suitcase. Standing in the doorway of her room, Robert was struck by its bareness. No toys scattered on the floor, no colorful decorations on the walls, just a neatly made bed and a stack of library books on the nightstand. On the desk sat a pad of drawing paper and colored pencils, the only evidence of childhood indulgence. "Is this everything?" he asked gently. Olivia nodded, then hesitated. She darted to her pillow and retrieved a photograph in a simple wooden frame. Michael Mitchell smiling broadly, holding newborn Lucas while Olivia leaned against his side. "Now we can go," she whispered, clutching the picture to her chest. As they descended the stairs, a tall, sharp-featured man appeared from the study. Andrew Reed, Cassandra's financial advisor, though rumors suggested a more intimate connection. His eyes narrowed at the sight of Robert. "Leaving so soon, Hughes? We were just about to discuss Michael's outstanding investments." Robert shifted Lucas in his arms, feeling the baby's warmth against his chest. "Any discussions about Michael's assets will happen with the estate lawyers present." A shadow passed over Andrew's face before his lips curved into a practiced smile. "Of course. Just trying to help Cassandra through this difficult transition." "I'm sure you are." Robert guided Olivia toward the door, acutely aware of Andrew's gaze following them. Outside, the snow had begun again, large flakes drifting lazily from a darkening sky. Robert secured the children in his car, ensuring Lucas's carrier was properly fastened before helping Olivia with her seatbelt. As he slid behind the wheel, he caught sight of Cassandra watching from the window, her silhouette sharp against the warm light of the foyer. The drive to Robert's penthouse was silent, save for Lucas's occasional whimpers and the rhythmic sweep of wipers clearing snow from the windshield. In the rearview mirror, Robert could see Olivia staring out at the passing city lights, her expression solemn beyond her years. "You'll be safe now," he said, breaking the silence. Olivia turned to meet his gaze in the mirror. "She said no one would believe me about the money, that people would think I'm bad like my real mom." Robert's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Your mother wasn't bad, Olivia. Sarah was one of the kindest people I ever knew. She died when Lucas was born." The simple sentiment carried years of grief. "Yes, she did." Robert couldn't offer false comfort about that truth. "She gave everything to bring your brother into the world." They lapsed back into silence as the car wound through the snowy streets toward downtown. Robert's mind raced with the implications of what he'd witnessed and the promise he'd made to Michael on that last fishing trip just months ago. "If anything happens to me, watch over them, Rob. There's no one else I trust." At the time, Robert had agreed easily, never imagining he would be called upon to fulfill that promise so soon. Now, with two vulnerable children in his car and a growing suspicion that Michael's sudden heart attack might not have been natural, the weight of that promise pressed upon him like a physical thing. The doorman at Robert's building greeted them with surprised deference, hurrying to help with the bags as Robert carried Lucas and held Olivia's hand. The penthouse elevator rose swiftly to the 30th floor, opening directly into a spacious apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the snow-covered city. "Welcome to my home," Robert said, suddenly aware of how little the space reflected the presence of children. The furnishings were elegant and masculine: leather, glass, and dark wood. No toys, no color, nothing to suggest warmth or play. Olivia stood in the center of the vast living room, Lucas heavy in her arms, both children looking impossibly small against the backdrop of urban sophistication. "It's so high up," she whispered. "Yes, I suppose it is." Robert took Lucas from her, noticing how the child clung to his sister. "Let me show you where you'll sleep tonight." The guest bedroom was equally austere, but Robert quickly transformed it with extra pillows and blankets, creating a nest for the children to share. He watched as Olivia arranged Lucas's bottle and the stuffed rabbit with practiced care. "Are you hungry?" he asked, realizing neither child had likely eaten dinner. Olivia nodded cautiously. "Lucas needs his formula. I can make it. I'll help you." Robert led her to the kitchen where they worked together to prepare the baby's bottle. He observed how confidently she measured the powder and tested the temperature on her wrist, a 7-year-old performing tasks that should have been an adult's responsibility. After feeding Lucas and settling him to sleep, Robert prepared a simple meal of grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. He sat across from Olivia at the kitchen island, watching her eat with careful, measured bites. Olivia, did your father ever seem worried about anything before he died? The girl paused, spoon halfway to her mouth. He didn't like the new medicine. Robert leaned forward. What new medicine? For his heart. He said it made him feel strange, but Cassandra told him the doctor said he had to take it. Olivia's voice dropped to a whisper. I heard him tell her he was going to call Dr. Adams about it. But then, her words trailed off. Then what happened? He got really sick that night. Cassandra called the ambulance, but they couldn't wake him up. Tears welled in her eyes. I wasn't allowed to say goodbye. Robert reached across the table and covered her small hand with his. I'm so sorry, Olivia. After dinner, he helped her prepare for bed, awkwardly assisting with Lucas's diaper change when she struggled with the task. He found himself marveling at the resilience of this child who had endured the loss of both parents, yet still cared so tenderly for her baby brother. When both children were finally settled, Robert retreated to his study and poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. He sank into the leather chair behind his desk, staring at the phone for a long moment before making the call. Catherine Morgan answered on the third ring, her voice sharp with professional precision even at this late hour. Catherine, it's Robert Hughes. I need your help. It's about Michael Mitchell's children. The conversation was brief but charged with urgency. As Michael's attorney for over 15 years, Catherine was intimately familiar with his affairs. Her promise to meet first thing in the morning brought some relief, but sleep remained elusive as Robert's mind churned with suspicion and concern. He found himself standing in the doorway of the guest bedroom, watching the steady rise and fall of the children's breathing. Lucas slept peacefully for the first time since their arrival, one tiny hand clutching his rabbit. Beside him, Olivia had curled protectively around her brother, her face finally relaxed in sleep. Robert's gaze drifted to the photograph she had placed on the bedside table. Michael's smiling face a stark reminder of all that had been lost. A familiar ache of grief tightened his chest, mingled now with a fierce determination he hadn't felt in years. On the wall of his study hung another photograph. Robert and Michael as young men, standing proudly before the first building of Hughes Construction. Beside it was a picture of Robert with his son David, taken on his 10th birthday. The boy's smile, so like his father's, frozen forever at an age he would never surpass. Robert touched the frame gently, his mind traveling back a decade to the day everything changed. The urgent phone call during a board meeting. The race to the hospital. The doctor's solemn face as he delivered the news that David hadn't survived the school bus accident. I should have been there, he whispered to the empty room. In the months and years that followed David's death, Robert had thrown himself into work, allowing Hughes Construction to consume his waking hours. His marriage had crumbled under the weight of shared grief. The passion that had once driven him, creating spaces for families to live and grow, had been reduced to mere ambition and profit margins. Until tonight, until 2 children, with no one else to turn to, had awakened something long dormant within him. I couldn't save you, David, he said to the photograph, but I will not fail these children. Morning arrived with crystal clarity, sunlight refracting through frost-covered windows. Robert woke before dawn, unaccustomed to the sounds of children in his home. Lucas's early cries, Olivia's gentle shushing as she attempted to quiet her brother. He found them in the kitchen, Olivia standing on tiptoes trying to reach the formula on the counter. Let me help, he offered, reaching past her for the container. Olivia startled, then relaxed when she saw it was him. I didn't want to wake you. It's okay. I'm usually up early. Robert measured the powder into the bottle. How did you both sleep? Good. Olivia hesitated, then added, Lucas only woke up once. That's better than at home. Home, the word hung between them, loaded with uncertainty. Robert handed her the prepared bottle. Olivia, after breakfast, a friend of your father's is coming over. Her name is Catherine Morgan. She's a lawyer who worked with your dad. Is she going to help us stay with you? The direct question caught Robert off guard. Would you want that? Olivia nodded solemnly. Cassandra doesn't like us. She says we remind her that Dad loved Mom more than her. The simple truth of the statement struck Robert with unexpected force. Before he could respond, the doorbell announced Catherine's arrival. Catherine Morgan swept into the penthouse with brisk efficiency, her tall frame impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, auburn hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. At 48, she carried herself with the confidence of a woman accustomed to commanding respect in male-dominated boardrooms. Her professional demeanor softened visibly when she saw Olivia. "Hello there, you must be Olivia." She knelt to the child's level. "I knew your father for a very long time." Olivia regarded her cautiously. "Did you help him with his business?" "I did, and many other things." Catherine smiled warmly. "He talked about you and Lucas all the time." While Olivia returned to caring for Lucas, the adults retreated to Robert's study. Catherine wasted no time unpacking her briefcase, spreading documents across his desk. Michael changed his will a month before he died. Her tone was measured, precise. He left everything to the children, with Cassandra as primary guardian and you as secondary guardian if she proved unfit or unwilling. Robert absorbed this information, connecting it to Olivia's revelation about the heart medication. When did he make this change? October 15th. Catherine consulted her notes. He seemed anxious, asked about the legal definition of undue influence. I suggested a thorough medical examination, thinking perhaps his judgment might be impaired. And was it? The results came back normal. Catherine's expression tightened, except his blood pressure was slightly elevated. That's when the new medication was prescribed. Robert paced to the window, looking out at the snow-covered city. "Did you think it strange that a healthy man would suddenly have heart problems?" "At the time, no. Men his age develop cardiac issues." Catherine paused. "But in light of what you witnessed yesterday, I'm beginning to question everything." She produced another document, sliding it across the desk. "This is more concerning. 3 days before he died, Michael sent me this email." Robert read the message, his blood running cold. "Catherine, something isn't right with the medication. I'm experiencing symptoms not listed in the side effects. Cassandra insists I continue taking it, but I've scheduled an appointment with Dr. Adams tomorrow. If anything happens to me, please ensure Robert receives guardianship of the children. I fear for their safety, Michael." "He never made it to that appointment," Catherine said quietly. "He died that night." Robert's mind raced with implications. "We need to speak with Dr. Adams." "Already arranged. He's expecting us at noon." Catherine gathered her papers. "But Robert, we need to tread carefully. If what we suspect is true, then Michael was murdered," Robert finished grimly, "and his children are living with his killer." Catherine nodded slowly. "We have 72 hours before the custody hearing. If we can't prove Cassandra is unfit by then, the court will likely maintain her guardianship. Then we have no time to waste." While Catherine made calls from the study, Robert returned to the living room where Olivia sat drawing, Lucas playing with blocks on the floor beside her. He watched them for a moment, struck by their resilience in the face of such loss and betrayal. "What are you drawing?" he asked, sitting beside her. Olivia shyly turned the paper toward him. The drawing showed 3 figures standing before a house: a tall man, a girl, and a baby. Snow fell around them, rendered in careful blue pencil strokes. "Is that us?" Robert asked gently. Olivia nodded. "That's our family." Family. The word pierced Robert's carefully constructed defenses. He had not considered himself part of a family since David's death and his subsequent divorce. Yet here was this child, including him in her concept of family, with such simple certainty. "It's beautiful, Olivia." She studied him for a moment. "Why don't you have any pictures of your family?" The question caught him off guard. I keep them in my bedroom." "Did they go away?" Robert swallowed hard. "Yes, my son David died in an accident when he was 10, and my wife and I divorced afterward." Olivia's eyes widened with the recognition of shared experience. "So you're alone too?" "I was," Robert said, surprising himself with the past tense. "Until now." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sarah Peterson, Olivia's homeroom teacher. Catherine had arranged for her to watch the children during their meeting with Dr. Adams. Sarah was a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle manner that immediately put Olivia at ease. "Miss Peterson!" The girl's face lit up with the first genuine smile Robert had seen. "Hello, sweetheart." Sarah embraced Olivia warmly. "And this must be Lucas. He's gotten so big." While Olivia proudly showed Sarah her drawing, Robert pulled Catherine aside. "Can we trust her?" "Completely." She was one of the few people who noticed changes in Olivia after Cassandra entered the picture. She reported concerns to the school counselor twice. This information settled Robert's unease. As they prepared to leave, he knelt before Olivia. "We won't be gone long. You're safe here with Miss Peterson." Olivia nodded solemnly. "Are you going to find out what happened to Dad?" The directness of the question startled him. "Yes, Olivia, that's exactly what we're going to do." "Good." She pressed something into his hand, a small wooden chess piece. A knight. "Take this, it's for protection." Robert closed his fingers around the carved figure, recognizing it as part of the chess set he had seen in Michael's study. "Thank you, I'll keep it safe." Sir William Adams's office was located in a stately brownstone in the medical district. The physician himself was a distinguished man in his 60s, with silver hair and thoughtful eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He greeted them in his private office, the certificates on the wall testifying to decades of respected practice. "I've been expecting this visit," he said without preamble. "Ever since I signed that death certificate, something hasn't sat right with me." Catherine opened her briefcase. "We need to know everything about Michael's heart condition and the medication he was prescribed." "That's just it." Dr. Adams leaned forward. "Michael Mitchell didn't have a heart condition. His cardiovascular system was exceptionally healthy for a man his age." Robert exchanged glances with Catherine. "Then why was he taking heart medication?" "He wasn't, at least not prescribed by me." Dr. Adams removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Michael called me 3 days before his death, concerned about medication I had supposedly prescribed. But I hadn't seen him in months, and certainly hadn't prescribed any cardiac medication." "So someone else wrote the prescription," Catherine said, "or created a convincing forgery." Dr. Adams retrieved a file from his desk. "I requested a toxicology report after his death, given the unusual circumstances. The results were concerning." He passed the report to Robert, who scanned the technical language before finding the conclusion highlighted at the bottom. "Presence of digoxin derivative at levels exceeding therapeutic range, consistent with cardiac arrest." "In plain English, doctor," Robert said, his voice tight, "Michael died from a lethal dose of a modified heart medication, one that would cause symptoms similar to heart failure but wouldn't be immediately identifiable as poison." Adams's expression was grave. "Someone with pharmaceutical knowledge would know how to administer this over time, culminating in a final, fatal dose." "Someone like Andrew Reed," Catherine murmured, "who conveniently has a background in pharmaceuticals." "I should have questioned it more," Dr. Adams said, regret heavy in his voice. "But Cassandra was so convincing about the other cardiologist, and with Michael's family history—" "What family history?" Robert interrupted sharply. "Cassandra mentioned Michael's father died of heart failure. Said it ran in the family." "Michael's father died in a car accident," Robert corrected, anger building. "I attended the funeral 20 years ago. Cassandra never even met him." The implications settled heavily over the room. Dr. Adams closed the file with a decisive snap. "I've already contacted the medical examiner's office. They're reopening the investigation based on these findings." Outside, snow had begun to fall again, thick flakes swirling in the bitter wind. Robert and Catherine hurried to his car, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "This is enough to challenge the guardianship," Catherine said as they pulled away from the curb. "We need to file immediately." Robert nodded grimly, his mind already racing ahead. "And we need to ensure the children's safety until then. If Cassandra realizes we're on to her—" "She already does." Catherine held up her phone, displaying a notification. "She's filed a police report claiming you've kidnapped the Mitchell children." The revelation hit Robert like a physical blow. "She's trying to discredit me before we can present the evidence." Classic misdirection. Catherine was already dialing. "I'll handle this, but we need to move quickly." The hearing has been moved up to tomorrow morning. As they navigated through increasingly heavy snow, Robert's phone rang. The number displayed was Sarah Peterson's. "Robert?" Her voice was tight with controlled panic. "Someone's here. A police officer and a woman claiming to be from Child Protective Services. They're demanding to take the children." Robert's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Don't let them in. Catherine is contacting the judge now for an emergency stay." "They have a court order, Robert. They're saying you'll be arrested for obstruction if I don't comply." A cold fear gripped him. Put the officer on the phone. The next few minutes passed in a blur of legal terminology as Robert handed his phone to Catherine, who spoke with measured authority to the officer. When she disconnected, her expression was grave. "I've bought us 30 minutes. The judge wants all parties at the courthouse immediately." Robert pressed the accelerator, the car fishtailing slightly on the snow-covered street. Will it be enough time? It has to be. Catherine was already making another call. "I'm having the toxicology report sent directly to Judge Harmon's chambers." The courthouse loomed ahead, its stone facade made ghostly by the falling snow. As they hurried up the steps, Robert caught sight of Cassandra arriving simultaneously from another direction, Andrew Reed at her side. She wore a black coat belted tightly at the waist, her expression a perfect mask of maternal concern. Their eyes met across the crowded foyer. For a heartbeat, her composure slipped, revealing the calculation beneath. Then she turned away, leaning into Andrew's shoulder as if seeking comfort. Judge Eleanor Harmon was a formidable woman in her 60s, her silver hair cut in a practical bob, her gaze sharp behind rectangular glasses. She surveyed the hastily assembled parties with undisguised irritation. "This better be urgent to justify an emergency session on a Saturday." Catherine stepped forward. "Your Honor, we have evidence suggesting the children's current guardian, Cassandra Mitchell, may have been involved in the death of their father, Michael Mitchell." Cassandra gasped audibly, turning to her attorney, Diane Bennett, a sleek woman known for her aggressive tactics. "This is slander." "Ms. Morgan, that's an extraordinary claim," Judge Harmon said, her gaze unwavering. "I presume you have extraordinary evidence?" "We do, Your Honor." Catherine presented the toxicology report and Dr. Adams's sworn statement. "We also have testimony from the deceased's daughter indicating suspicious behavior regarding medication." Judge Harmon reviewed the documents carefully, her expression giving nothing away. When she looked up, her gaze swept over Cassandra and Andrew before settling on Robert. "Mr. Hughes, you were named secondary guardian in Mr. Mitchell's will. Are you prepared to assume responsibility for these children if I grant temporary custody?" "I am, Your Honor." Robert's voice was firm, certain. "Your Honor," Diane Bennett interjected, "Mr. Hughes is a single man with no experience raising children. He works 70-hour weeks. How can he possibly provide appropriate care?" "I've already arranged for family leave," Robert countered, "and I have resources to ensure the children receive everything they need." Judge Harmon considered this, then turned to Cassandra. "Mrs. Mitchell, these allegations are serious enough to warrant investigation. Until this matter is resolved, I am granting temporary custody to Robert Hughes." Cassandra's composure cracked, her voice rising. "This is outrageous. Those children belong with me. Robert Hughes is using his money and influence to steal my family." "Mrs. Mitchell, control yourself," Judge Harmon warned. "This arrangement is temporary pending a full investigation. We reconvene in 72 hours with complete findings." As the judge rose to leave, Cassandra lunged toward Robert, her face contorted with fury. "You think you've won. You haven't. Those children will never be yours. Michael wasn't even worthy of them. Why should you be?" Court officers moved quickly to restrain her, but not before Robert caught the full impact of her hatred. In that moment, he saw past her beautiful facade to the darkness beneath. In the corridor outside, Sarah Peterson waited with the children. Olivia held Lucas protectively, her eyes wide with apprehension. When she saw Robert, relief washed over her face. "Uncle Robert!" He knelt to embrace her, feeling the tension in her small frame. "Everything's okay now. You're coming home with me." "For how long?" Olivia asked, her voice small. Robert met her gaze steadily. "For as long as you need me." As they walked toward the exit, Robert felt the weight of the wooden knight in his pocket, a symbol of protection, of the promise he had made not only to Michael, but now to these children. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in pristine white. But the path ahead was clear for the first time in years. For Olivia and Lucas, he would become the guardian they needed. For his lost friend, he would ensure justice was served. And for himself, for the man who had been sleepwalking through life since losing his son, he would embrace this second chance at family. The flame of purpose, long extinguished by grief, burned bright once more. The investigation into Michael Mitchell's death began in earnest the morning after the emergency custody hearing. Snow had stopped falling overnight, leaving the city encased in a crystalline stillness that belied the turmoil unfolding within its gleaming towers and courtrooms. Robert Hughes sat across from Detective James Callahan in the main precinct building, the steam from untouched coffee cups rising between them. At 53, Callahan carried himself with the weary confidence of a man who had seen humanity at its worst, yet refused to surrender his belief in justice. The medical examiner has confirmed Dr. Adams's assessment, Callahan said, sliding a folder across the table. Michael Mitchell was poisoned systematically over several weeks, culminating in a final lethal dose the night he died. Robert studied the report, the clinical language transforming his friend's final moments into cold data points. And the poison? A modified digoxin compound, difficult to detect unless specifically tested for. Callahan leaned forward, lowering his voice. The kind of thing someone with pharmaceutical knowledge would know how to administer. Andrew Reed, Robert said, the name bitter on his tongue. We're looking into him. Former pharmacist, license revoked 3 years ago for prescription fraud. Callahan took a sip of his coffee. But he's not our only person of interest. The implication hung in the air. Cassandra had been the one administering Michael's medication each day, insisting that the regimen was too complicated for him to manage himself. What do you need from me? Robert asked. Everything you know about the Mitchell marriage. When Cassandra entered the picture, how Michael changed afterward. Any concerns he expressed to you. Robert closed his eyes briefly, memories flooding back. Michael was devastated after Sarah died in childbirth. He raised Olivia alone for 6 years, devoted himself completely to her. Then he met Cassandra at a charity gala last year. And the romance was whirlwind. She moved into the house within 2 months. They were married 3 months after that. Robert frowned, remembering his own unvoiced concerns. It all happened very quickly. Did you ever express reservations to Michael? Once. The memory was uncomfortable. He didn't take it well. Said I was judging her without knowing her, that she made him happy again. And after they married, Robert hesitated. Michael became more distant, canceled our regular fishing trips, stopped coming to the office as often, said he was focusing on family time, but the few times I saw him, he seemed diminished somehow, less decisive. He started second-guessing business decisions he would have made confidently before. And there was something else. Robert paused, the realization dawning as he spoke. He started taking medication for anxiety. Said Cassandra had taken him to a specialist who diagnosed him. Callahan made a note. When was this? About 3 months after the wedding. Robert's jaw tightened. You think she was poisoning him even then? Building a tolerance, perhaps? Making him dependent on her for his health management. Callahan's expression hardened. Classic control tactic escalated to murder when she secured her position. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Catherine Morgan, her usual composure slightly disheveled from rushing. The pharmacy records arrived, she announced, placing a thick folder on the table. Andrew Reed filled prescriptions for anxiety medication, sleeping pills, and heart medication, all allegedly prescribed by different doctors for Michael Mitchell. And were they legitimate prescriptions? Callahan asked. Catherine's smile was grimly triumphant. 3 different doctors have confirmed they never wrote them. The signatures were forged. For the first time since the investigation began, Robert felt the grim satisfaction of progress. Yet as he left the precinct with Catherine, a new worry gnawed at him. Cassandra won't go down easily, he said as they walked to his car. She'll fight for control of the children and the estate. Catherine nodded. Which is why we need to be prepared for her counterattack. The warning proved prescient. By afternoon, Robert received a call from Sarah Peterson, her voice tight with concern. Margaret Wilson has been spreading stories at school, she reported, saying Olivia was caught stealing multiple times, that Michael was planning to send her to boarding school before he died. Robert's hand tightened around the phone. Margaret Wilson, the neighbor? Yes, she and Cassandra have become quite close. The rumors are affecting Olivia. Children can be cruel. The protective instinct that had awakened in Robert flared stronger. I'll handle it. That evening, after ensuring the children were settled with their dinner, Robert visited the Wilson home, an imposing tutor just 2 doors down from the Mitchell mansion. Margaret Wilson answered the door herself, her pinched features arranging themselves into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Hughes, what a surprise." "Mrs. Wilson says, may I come in? I'd like to discuss something important." Margaret hesitated, then stepped aside, leading him to a formal sitting room where every surface gleamed with polish and pretension. "I understand you have been sharing certain stories about Olivia Mitchell," Robert began, declining the offered seat. Margaret's chin lifted. "I only repeat what I observed, Mr. Hughes. That child has been troubled since her mother died. Cassandra has been nothing but patient with her." "Strange. That's not what Olivia's teachers report, or her pediatrician, or the numerous adults who knew her before Cassandra entered the picture." Robert's voice remained calm, but the steel beneath was unmistakable. "In fact, the only people who seem to find Olivia troubled are those within Cassandra's immediate circle." "Well, Mrs. Wilson, let me be direct. Michael Mitchell was murdered. The police are investigating Cassandra as the primary suspect. By spreading malicious rumors about an innocent child who has already lost both parents, you're not only causing harm to that child, you're potentially interfering with a murder investigation." The color drained from Margaret's face. "I had no idea." "Perhaps not, but now you do." Robert moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing, Mrs. Wilson. Slander is both a criminal offense and grounds for civil litigation. Should these rumors continue, Catherine Morgan would be happy to explain the potential financial consequences to you in detail." He left her standing speechless in her impeccable living room, the facade of neighborhood propriety shattered. The victory was short-lived. Early the next morning, Lucas developed a high fever, his small body burning with heat that terrified Olivia. "Something's wrong with Lucas," she said, appearing in Robert's bedroom doorway at dawn, the baby flushed and whimpering in her arms. Robert was on his feet instantly, taking Lucas from her. The infant's skin was hot to the touch, his breathing rapid. "Call Dr. Reynolds," he instructed the housekeeper, who had appeared in the hallway, alerted by the commotion. "No," Olivia's voice was sharp with fear. "We need to go to the hospital now. This happened after Cassandra gave him special medicine." Robert didn't hesitate. Within minutes, they were in his car, racing through the pre-dawn streets toward Boston Children's Hospital. Snow had begun falling again, thick flakes reducing visibility and turning the roads treacherous. Robert drove with fierce concentration, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching back occasionally to touch Lucas's leg in reassurance. Beside him, Olivia sat silent, her small face set in determined calm that no 7-year-old should need to muster. "He'll be okay," Robert said, trying to comfort her. Olivia's eyes, too old for her young face, met his in the rearview mirror. "Cassandra said he was too much trouble. That babies with problems cost too much to keep healthy." The casual cruelty of the statement hit Robert with physical force. Before he could respond, Lucas began to cry more intensely, his little body stiffening in distress. Robert pressed harder on the accelerator, the car fishtailing slightly on the slick road. As they rounded a sharp curve, headlights suddenly blinded him. A truck had skidded into their lane, bearing down on them with unstoppable momentum. In the split second before impact, Robert's thoughts were not of his own safety, but of the children. Olivia's solemn eyes, Lucas's tiny hand clutching his toy rabbit. He wrenched the wheel sharply right, sending the car plowing into a snowbank instead of the oncoming truck. The impact was jarring but not catastrophic. Airbags deployed in a sudden explosion of white, momentarily disorienting Robert. When his vision cleared, his first frantic thought was for the children. "Olivia? Lucas? We're okay." Olivia's voice was steady despite the circumstances. "But Lucas is still really hot." Robert forced his door open against the packed snow and quickly extracted the children from the back seat. The truck had stopped further down the road, its driver approaching with concern, but Robert couldn't wait. Carrying Lucas and holding Olivia's hand, he flagged down an approaching car. The driver, an elderly man with kind eyes, took one look at the baby and immediately offered assistance. 10 minutes later, they arrived at the emergency entrance of Boston Children's Hospital. What followed was a blur of activity, nurses rushing forward, the triage assessment, Lucas being whisked away for immediate care. Robert stood in the corridor, snow melting from his coat onto the polished floor. Olivia's hand clutched tightly in his. Family of Lucas Mitchell? Robert turned to see a woman in a white coat approaching, her expression professional but warm. Doctor. Emma Harris introduced herself as the pediatric specialist on duty. Lucas has a serious ear infection that's causing his high fever. We've started him on antibiotics and medication to reduce the fever. Her gaze sharpened. But I'm concerned about something else we found in his blood work. What is it? Robert asked, tension coiling in his stomach. Traces of benzodiazepine, a sedative that is absolutely not prescribed to infants. Dr. Harris's voice lowered. Someone has been giving this baby inappropriate medication. Olivia's small voice cut in. Cassandra put medicine in his bottle sometimes. She said it would help him sleep through the night. Dr. Harris knelt to Olivia's level. Did you ever see what this medicine looked like? Little blue pills. She crushed them up in his milk. The doctor exchanged a grave look with Robert before focusing back on Olivia. You're a very brave girl for telling us this. You've helped your brother tremendously. While Olivia was taken to see Lucas, Dr. Harris drew Robert aside. I'm legally obligated to report this to Child Protective Services, Sheridan said. But given what you've told me about the custody situation, I'll make sure they understand the context. Robert nodded gratefully. There's an active police investigation regarding the children's father's death. Detective James Callahan is handling the case. I'll contact him directly. Dr. Harris handed him her card. Lucas will need to stay overnight for observation, but he should recover completely. There's no indication of permanent damage from the sedatives. Relief washed through Robert, followed quickly by cold fury at what Cassandra had done. As he rejoined Olivia at Lucas's bedside, he found her singing softly to her brother, a lullaby their mother must have sung to her years ago. The scene crystallized Robert's resolve. These children needed more than temporary protection. They needed a permanent home where they would be loved and valued. With sudden clarity, he realized he wanted to be the one to provide that home. His contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Catherine Morgan, her expression grave despite her attempt at composure. Robert, we have a situation. She drew him aside, speaking in a low voice. Cassandra has filed an emergency petition claiming you're an unfit guardian. She's alleging you endangered the children by driving recklessly in hazardous conditions. What? How did she even know about the accident? Someone at the hospital must have contacted her. Catherine's frown deepened. There's more. She submitted a psychological evaluation suggesting you're suffering from unresolved trauma following your son's death, rendering you emotionally unstable. The accusation struck with precision at Robert's deepest vulnerability. That's absurd. It's calculated, Catherine corrected. She's trying to shift focus from her actions to yours. And she's convinced Diane Bennett to request a psychiatric evaluation before the next custody hearing. Robert's jaw tightened. When? Tomorrow morning. Judge Harmon wants to speak with Olivia as well. The thought of Olivia being questioned, forced to relive the trauma of recent events, filled Robert with protective rage. She's 7 years old, Catherine. Haven't these children been through enough? I've requested special accommodations. A child psychologist present. Questions submitted in advance. Catherine placed a steadying hand on his arm. We knew Cassandra would fight dirty, Robert. But we have something she doesn't. What's that? The truth, and now evidence of her drugging Lucas. Catherine's eyes gleamed with determination. Detective Callahan is obtaining a warrant to search the Mitchell house based on Dr. Harris's report. The next morning dawned clear and brutally cold. Lucas had improved enough to be discharged, though he remained fussy and clingy, particularly with Olivia. Robert had arranged for them to stay in a hotel suite near the courthouse, concerned that returning to his penthouse might expose them to further accusations of endangerment. As they prepared for the hearing, Robert knelt before Olivia, straightening the collar of the new dress Catherine had purchased for her. Today, you'll talk to the judge, he explained gently. She needs to understand what happened when you lived with Cassandra. Olivia nodded solemnly. Will I have to see Cassandra? No, she'll be in another room. Robert hesitated, then continued. Olivia, I want you to know something important. No matter what happens today, I will never stop fighting for you and Lucas. The child studied him with those old eyes in her young face. Promise? I promise. Robert held out his pinky finger, remembering the sacred ritual of childhood promises. Olivia linked her tiny finger with his, the ghost of a smile touching her lips. The courthouse was crowded when they arrived. Reporters gathered on the steps despite the bitter cold. Robert sheltered the children as best he could, hurrying them through a side entrance where Catherine waited. Diane Bennett is requesting a closed hearing, she informed him. Judge Harmon is considering it now. Good. The children don't need this circus. They were directed to a small anteroom where Dr. Laura Chen, the court-appointed child psychologist, waited to speak with Olivia. Dr. Chen was a gentle-voiced woman with kind eyes behind stylish glasses, and she quickly established rapport with the solemn child. Would you prefer if Mr. Hughes stayed with you while we talk? She asked Olivia. Olivia glanced at Robert, then back to Dr. Chen. Yes, please. Robert sat quietly in the corner as Dr. Bao. Chen engaged Olivia in conversation, skillfully guiding her through questions about her life before and after Cassandra entered the picture. He watched with a mixture of pride and heartache as Olivia answered clearly and directly, her composure remarkable for a child her age. After Mommy died, Daddy took care of us, she explained. He read me stories every night and made pancakes on Sundays. And after your father married Cassandra? Olivia's expression clouded. He got sick a lot, tired. He didn't read stories anymore because Cassandra said I was too old for that. Did Cassandra take care of you and Lucas? No. Olivia's answer was immediate. She had the housekeeper do everything. But when Mrs. Garcia left, I had to take care of Lucas myself. What about when your father died? How did things change then? Olivia's small hands twisted in her lap. Cassandra said we cost too much money. She said Lucas cried too much and I asked too many questions. She locked us in our room sometimes when her friends came over. Each revelation pierced Robert's heart. The systematic cruelty Olivia described, being denied food as punishment, Lucas left in soiled diapers for hours, being forced to clean the house like a servant, painted a picture of calculated abuse designed to break a child's spirit. When Dr. Chen asked about the alleged stealing incident, Olivia's eyes filled with tears for the first time. I didn't take the money. Andrew put it in my pocket when I wasn't looking. I saw him do it in the mirror, but Cassandra wouldn't believe me. The interview continued for nearly an hour, Dr. Chen gently coaxing the full story from Olivia while documenting everything for her report to the judge. When it was finished, she praised Olivia's courage and offered her a selection of stuffed animals. Olivia chose a small gray elephant, hugging it close as if it could shield her from the memories she'd just revisited. In the hallway outside, Catherine waited with Lucas, who had fallen asleep in her arms. She transferred him gently to Robert. Dr. Chen has gone to speak with Judge Harmon, she said quietly. Callahan called. The search warrant turned up something significant at the Mitchell house. What? A hidden safe in Cassandra's closet containing vials of digoxin, prescription pads from multiple doctors, and financial documents showing she's been transferring money from Michael's accounts to offshore holdings. Robert absorbed this information, anger mingling with vindication. Is it enough? It should be, but Cassandra has disappeared. What do you mean disappeared? She wasn't at the house when police arrived. Her car is gone, passport missing. They're checking airports and train stations now. The implications chilled Robert. A desperate Cassandra facing criminal charges with nothing to lose. She became exponentially more dangerous. Before he could respond, the courtroom doors opened and a clerk emerged, summoning them inside. Judge Harmon sat behind the bench, her expression grave as she surveyed the assembled parties. Diane Bennett occupied the respondents' table alone, her polished veneer showing cracks of concern. Where is your client, Ms. Bennett? Judge Harmon inquired sharply. I'm not certain, Your Honor. We spoke last night, but she hasn't responded to my calls this morning. Judge Harmon's lips thinned to a disapproving line. I see. Well, given the circumstances and the evidence presented to this court, including Dr. Chen's preliminary assessment, I am prepared to rule on temporary custody. Robert held his breath, acutely aware of Olivia beside him and Lucas sleeping against his chest. Based on the preponderance of evidence, I am granting full temporary custody of Olivia and Lucas Mitchell to Robert Hughes, effective immediately. Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order barring Cassandra Mitchell from any contact with the minor children pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. Relief flooded through Robert, so intense it left him momentarily lightheaded. Beside him, Olivia's small hand slipped into his, squeezing tightly. Additionally, Judge Harmon continued, I am freezing all assets of the Mitchell estate to prevent further dissipation of funds intended for the children's care. Ms. Bennett, please inform your client that failure to appear at the next hearing will result in a warrant for her arrest. As they left the courtroom, Robert caught sight of Margaret Wilson hovering near the exit, her expression stricken with remorse. When she approached, he instinctively drew the children closer. Mr. Hughes, she began, voice trembling. I've made a terrible mistake. Cassandra called me this morning, said things that made me realize. She admitted using Lucas's medication to manipulate him. She sounded unstable. Did she say where she was going? Margaret shook her head. No, but she mentioned something about Andrew Reed meeting her. She said they were taking what they deserved. Robert exchanged alarmed glances with Catherine. Thank you for telling us. Please share this with Detective Callahan immediately. As Margaret hurried away, Catherine pulled Robert aside, lowering her voice. Andrew Reed withdrew $50,000 in cash yesterday afternoon. His apartment is empty, cleaned out. They're running. Robert's mind raced. But why would Cassandra call Margaret this morning? To gloat? To spread more poison? Catherine suggested. A cold suspicion formed in Robert's mind. Or to find out where we are. They moved quickly after that, Robert carrying Lucas while Catherine took Olivia's hand. Instead of the main entrance where reporters waited, they exited through a service corridor that led to the parking garage. The cavernous space was dimly lit and eerily quiet, their footsteps echoing against concrete walls. Robert scanned each shadowy corner with growing unease as they approached his car. They were halfway across the garage when the distinctive click of high heels on concrete echoed behind them. Robert turned to see Cassandra emerging from behind a pillar, her beautiful face distorted with rage. Leaving so soon? Her voice carried in the empty space. With my children? Robert passed Lucas to Catherine, positioning himself between her and Cassandra. The court has ruled, Cassandra. It's over. Over, she laughed, a brittle sound devoid of humor. Thing is over until I say it is. Those children are my ticket to Michael's fortune, and I've worked too hard to lose now. The police are looking for you, Catherine said calmly. Turn yourself in while you still can. Cassandra ignored her, focusing entirely on Robert. You think you're so noble, don't you? The white knight rushing in to save the orphans. But you couldn't even save your own son. What makes you think you can protect them? The barb struck its intended target, but Robert refused to be baited. I'm calling security, he said, reaching for his phone. I wouldn't do that. Cassandra's hand emerged from her coat pocket, holding something that glinted in the dim light. A syringe. One step closer and I'll use this. It contains enough digoxin to stop a heart in minutes. Michael found that out the hard way. A cold dread settled in Robert's stomach. Cassandra, think about what you're doing. Oh, I've thought about nothing else for the past year. Her smile was terrible in its beauty. Do you know what it's like to grow up with nothing? To watch your mother die because you couldn't afford the right doctor? I swore I'd never be poor again. Bashitia. Michael was my ticket out, but he was too besotted with the memory of his precious Sarah to change his will like he was supposed to. She took a step closer, the syringe held before her like a weapon. So now I'm taking what should have been mine. The offshore accounts aren't enough. I want it all, and these children are my leverage. Behind Robert, Olivia whimpered softly, the sound piercing his heart. In that moment, his fear transformed into something harder, more resolute. You'll have to go through me first, he said quietly. Cassandra's laugh was cold. Happily! She lunged forward with unexpected speed, the syringe aimed at Robert's chest. He blocked her arm, grappling for control of the deadly needle. They struggled, Cassandra's strength fueled by desperation and rage. The syringe came perilously close to Robert's neck before he managed to force her arm back. In the struggle, they crashed against a concrete pillar, Cassandra crying out as her wrist struck the unyielding surface. The syringe clattered to the ground, rolling beneath a nearby car. Cassandra dove for it, but Robert caught her ankle, pulling her back. She twisted, kicking out with her other foot, catching him in the shoulder. For a moment, she broke free, scrambling toward where the syringe had fallen. Robert launched himself after her, tackling her to the ground just as her fingers closed around the needle. They rolled across the cold concrete, each fighting for control. Robert pinned her arm, forcing it away from his body as the needle hovered dangerously close to his skin. "Stop fighting," he gasped. "It's over, Cassandra." "Nothing's over," she snarled, writhing beneath him. "I deserve that money. Those brats don't need it. They don't even remember their precious father." With a surge of strength born of pure hatred, she twisted her wrist and drove the needle toward Robert's neck. He jerked away, but not before feeling the sharp sting of its tip breaking his skin. A wave of cold terror washed over him. Had she injected the poison? He couldn't tell. The momentary distraction was all Cassandra needed. She shoved him aside and scrambled to her feet, advancing toward Catherine and the children. Catherine pushed Olivia behind her, holding Lucas protectively against her chest. "Stay back," she warned. Cassandra smiled, triumphant. "Give me the baby. Now." "No!" Olivia darted out from behind Catherine, placing herself directly in Cassandra's path. "You hurt my daddy. You're not hurting Lucas, too." The child's defiance seemed to enrage Cassandra further. She reached for Olivia with clawed hands. "You little—" Robert surged to his feet, ignoring the dizziness that threatened to overwhelm him. With the last of his strength, he grabbed Cassandra from behind, pinning her arms. "Catherine, take the children and—" he shouted. Catherine hesitated only a moment before rushing toward the exit, Olivia at her side and Lucas clutched to her chest. Left alone with Cassandra, Robert felt his strength beginning to ebb. Whether from the struggle or from whatever might have entered his system from the syringe, his limbs felt increasingly heavy. "You're dying," Cassandra hissed, sensing his weakness. "Just like Michael. The digoxin is already working." "Then we'll go together," Robert growled, tightening his grip. "Because I'm not letting you go until help arrives." They remained locked in that desperate embrace, seconds stretching into minutes that felt like hours. Robert's vision began to blur at the edges, but still he held on, driven by a single thought: protecting the children who had come to mean everything to him. The sound of running footsteps echoed through the garage, security guards alerted by Catherine. As they approached, Cassandra made one last desperate attempt to break free, twisting violently in Robert's grasp. "Let go of me," she screamed. "You're nothing. Those children will never be yours." Robert's response was quiet but absolute. "They already are." As security personnel surrounded them, Robert's strength finally gave out. He collapsed to the concrete floor, darkness encroaching on his vision. His last conscious thought was of Olivia's solemn eyes and Lucas's tiny hand clutching his finger. He had promised to protect them. He could not fail now. The world faded to black as emergency sirens wailed in the distance. The steady beep of medical monitors formed a rhythmic backdrop to the hushed voices in the hospital room. Robert Hughes lay motionless on starched white sheets, an IV dripping antidote into his veins, counteracting the digoxin that had nearly stopped his heart. The doctors had been cautiously optimistic. He had received only a partial dose before the needle was dislodged, and emergency treatment had begun quickly. Outside the room, Catherine Morgan maintained her vigil, coordinating with police, updating colleagues, and most importantly, reassuring two frightened children that the man who had become their protector would survive. Olivia sat beside Catherine in the waiting area, her small body rigid with tension, Lucas asleep in her arms. She hadn't spoken since the attack in the parking garage, retreating into a silence that concerned the child psychologist who had been called to assist. "Olivia," Catherine said gently, "Robert is very strong. The doctors say he's going to be okay." The child's eyes, haunted beyond their years, lifted to Catherine's face. "Everyone who takes care of us goes away." The simple statement, delivered without tears or dramatics, struck Catherine with devastating force. Before she could respond, Detective Callahan appeared in the corridor, his expression grim but satisfied. "We've got them both," he announced without preamble. "Cassandra is in custody. Andrew Reed was apprehended at Logan Airport trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands." Catherine exhaled slowly, relief washing through her. "And the evidence?" Rock solid. Reed cracked during questioning, admitted everything. The offshore accounts, the forged prescriptions, the plot to eliminate Michael and gain control of his estate. Callahan's voice lowered. They never expected anyone to challenge them, least of all Robert Hughes. "How is he?" the detective asked, glancing toward the closed door of Robert's room. "Stable, the doctors are cautiously optimistic." Callahan nodded, his weathered face softening as he looked at Olivia and Lucas. "These kids have been through hell, but they've got a fighter in their corner." As he departed, a nurse approached to inform them that Robert was awake and asking for the children. Catherine hesitated, uncertain if seeing him in his weakened state would further traumatize Olivia. "Can I go see Uncle Robert?" Olivia asked, her voice small but determined. "Are you sure you're ready?" Catherine asked gently. Olivia nodded, her chin lifting with unexpected resolve. "He promised he wouldn't leave us. I want to make sure." Catherine accompanied the children into the dimly lit room. Robert lay propped against pillows, his normally commanding presence diminished by hospital gown and medical equipment. Yet his eyes, when they found Olivia and Lucas, burned with the same fierce protective love that had driven him to stand against Cassandra. "There are my brave ones," he said, voice raspy but warm. Olivia approached the bed cautiously, Lucas balanced on her hip. She studied Robert's face with solemn intensity. "Are you going to die?" The question was direct, unvarnished by adult platitudes. "No, Olivia, I'm not going to die." Robert reached out, taking her small hand in his. "The doctors fixed me up. I'll be good as new in a few days." "Promise?" "I promise, Boisu." He squeezed her hand gently. "And I always keep my promises, remember?" Something in the child's rigid posture eased, the barrier of protective detachment beginning to crack. Her lower lip trembled, and for the first time since the attack, emotion broke through her carefully maintained control. "She tried to hurt you because of us," Olivia whispered, a tear sliding down her cheek. "No, sweetheart." Robert's voice strengthened with conviction. "What happened wasn't your fault or Lucas's. Cassandra made her own choices, bad choices, but she can't hurt any of us anymore." He shifted slightly, wincing at the movement, and patted the edge of the bed. "Come up here, both of you." With Catherine's help, Olivia climbed onto the bed, settling beside Robert with Lucas cradled between them. The baby, sensing the emotional undercurrent, remained unusually quiet, his wide eyes fixed on Robert's face. "Cassandra and Andrew have been arrested," Robert explained gently. "They're going to go to jail for a long time for what they did to your father and for trying to hurt us." Olivia absorbed this information, her brow furrowing in thought. "But what happens to us now?" It was the question Robert had been pondering since he regained consciousness. In the terrible moment when he felt the needle pierce his skin, when he believed he might be dying, his greatest regret was not having secured the children's future. "That depends," he said carefully. "What would you like to happen?" Olivia looked down at Lucas, then back to Robert, her expression serious beyond her years. "I want us to stay with you, forever." On the simplicity of the request, the naked trust it revealed, tightened Robert's throat with emotion. "I want that too, Olivia. More than anything. Can we?" Hope flickered in her eyes, fragile and precious. "We'll have to talk to Judge Harmon and some other people, but yes, I believe we can." Robert gently smoothed her hair. "I want to adopt you and Lucas legally, to make us a real family." Olivia's eyes widened. "You mean you would be our dad?" "If that's what you want, I could never replace your father, but I would be honored to be your dad too." The girl considered this solemnly, her small face working through complex emotions. "Daddy would like that. He always said you were his best friend." "He was mine too." Robert's voice roughened with grief. "And I promise to tell you and Lucas stories about him every day, so you'll always remember him." Olivia nodded, a ghost of a smile touching her lips for the first time in days. "I'd like that." They remained together in companionable silence, the beeping monitors and hospital bustle fading into the background. Lucas eventually dozed off, his tiny hand clutching Robert's hospital gown. Olivia, too, began to droop with exhaustion, her head gradually coming to rest against Robert's shoulder. As both children slept beside him, Robert met Catherine's gaze over their heads. "Make it happen," he said quietly, "whatever it takes." Catherine nodded, understanding the magnitude of what he was asking. I'll start the paperwork tomorrow. The legal process of adopting Olivia and Lucas began while Robert was still recovering in the hospital. Catherine, with her characteristic efficiency, assembled a team of family law specialists to navigate the complexities of the case. Under normal circumstances, the adoption of non-relatives would involve months, if not years, of home studies, background checks, and court appearances. But these were not normal circumstances. The murder of the children's father, the attempted murder of their potential guardian, and the ongoing criminal case against Cassandra created a unique situation that Catherine was determined to expedite. Judge Eleanor Harmon agreed to maintain jurisdiction over both the criminal and adoption cases, providing continuity that benefited everyone, especially the children. She visited Robert in the hospital, her usual stern demeanor softening slightly as she observed the obvious bond forming between him and his young charges. Mr. Hughes, she began, settling into the chair beside his bed. I've reviewed Ms. Morgan's petition for expedited adoption proceedings. It's highly unusual. These are unusual circumstances, Your Honor. Robert had insisted on sitting up properly for this meeting, despite the pain it caused his healing body. These children need stability now, not months from now. Judge Harmon studied him thoughtfully. Why you, Mr. Hughes? You're a successful businessman with no childcare experience. Your company requires significant attention. You're a single man in his late 50s. There are younger couples who would gladly adopt these children, especially given the Mitchell fortune. The question might have seemed harsh, but Robert recognized it as a necessary challenge, one he needed to answer honestly. Because I love their father like a brother, he began, his voice steady. Because I've come to love these children as my own. Because when I thought I might die in that parking garage, my only regret was not having secured their future. He paused, gathering his thoughts. And because I know what it means to lose a child, Your Honor. I would give anything to have had more time with my son. Now fate has given me a second chance at fatherhood, and given Olivia and Lucas a second chance at family. Judge Harmon's expression remained impassive, but something in her eyes had softened. And your business responsibilities? I've already begun restructuring the company leadership. My COO, James Donovan, will assume day-to-day operations while I take a 6-month leave of absence to focus on the children's transition. And after those 6 months, I'll return in a reduced capacity, no more than 30 hours per week with flexible scheduling to accommodate the children's needs. Robert leaned forward slightly, his intensity palpable. I built that company to create a legacy for my son. When I lost him, the purpose vanished. These children have restored that purpose, but with a crucial difference. I now understand that no company is worth sacrificing family for. Judge Harmon nodded slowly. I'm authorizing the expedited home study and temporary placement while the adoption is processed. But Mr. Hughes, she fixed him with her penetrating gaze, these children have experienced profound trauma and betrayal. They will need more than material comforts and good intentions. I know, Your Honor. I've already arranged for family therapy sessions to begin next week, and I'm interviewing specialized child psychologists recommended by Dr. Chen. For the first time, a smile flickered across the judge's stern features. Good. I'll see you in my chambers when you are released from the hospital. The children should be present for that meeting. As the judge departed, Robert sank back against his pillows, exhaustion sweeping over him. The physical healing was progressing well, but the emotional journey for himself and the children had only just begun. 3 days later, Robert was discharged from the hospital. Catherine had arranged for them to stay temporarily at her family's lake house, a secluded property outside the city where they could avoid media attention while Robert recovered and the children adjusted to their new circumstances. The cabin was rustic but comfortable, with large windows overlooking the frozen lake and surrounding pine forest. Snow blanketed the landscape in pristine white, creating a sense of isolation that felt protective rather than lonely. Olivia explored the space cautiously at first, as if expecting to be told certain areas were off-limits. Lucas, sensing the change in environment, became fussy and clingy, wanting to be held constantly. It's normal for them to be unsettled, Sarah Peterson explained during her visit the day after their arrival. The teacher had become an invaluable support, bringing schoolwork for Olivia and offering guidance on reestablishing routines. They're testing to see if the rules have changed again, if they're truly safe here. Robert nodded, watching as Olivia methodically organized Lucas's toys in the living room. How do I convince them they are? Consistency, predictability, follow through on every promise, no matter how small. Sarah's expression softened. And patience. Trust takes time to rebuild. That evening, Robert instituted their first family ritual, story time before bed. He settled into the overstuffed chair in the children's room, Olivia beside him and Lucas on his lap, and began reading from a collection of children's classics Catherine had provided. My father used to read this to me, he explained, showing them the worn copy of The Wind in the Willows. And I read it to my son David when he was little. Olivia touched the book's cover reverently. Who's David? Robert hesitated only briefly before answering. David was my son. He died in an accident when he was 10 years old. Like my daddy died? Yes, but differently. David's school bus was in an accident. The words still brought pain, but somehow sharing them with Olivia felt right, an honoring of David's memory rather than a reopening of the wound. Were you sad? Olivia's eyes, wise beyond their years, studied his face. Very sad, for a long time. Robert smiled gently. But you know what helps with sadness? Remembering the happy times. David loved this book, especially the adventure parts. I think you will too. As he read, Robert felt something shift within him, a healing he hadn't known he needed. The familiar words brought back memories of David cuddled against him, just as Lucas was now, and of his own father reading the same passages decades earlier. 3 generations connected through story, with 2 children who had become unexpected links in that chain. The peaceful interlude was interrupted the following day by news that Cassandra had entered a plea agreement, confessing to Michael's murder in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. Andrew Reed had turned state's witness, providing detailed testimony about their plan to gain control of the Mitchell fortune. She'll serve consecutive life sentences, Catherine explained during her visit. No possibility of parole. Reed will serve 20 years minimum. Robert absorbed this information with mixed emotions. Justice had been served, but it couldn't restore what had been lost. Michael would never see his children grow up. Olivia and Lucas would never know their father's guidance through life's milestones. Yet from tragedy had come an unexpected blessing, the formation of a new family from the fragments of broken ones. The meeting in Judge Harmon's chambers was scheduled for the following week. Robert spent the intervening days healing physically and preparing emotionally, working with Dr. Chen to understand how best to support the children through the transition. Olivia, for her part, had begun to show small signs of rebuilding trust. She no longer startled when Robert entered a room unexpectedly. She'd begun asking questions about his work, his home, whether there would be space for her drawings in their permanent residence. Most significantly, she'd stopped carrying Lucas everywhere, allowing Robert to care for the baby for increasing periods. Lucas, too, was changing, babbling more frequently, reaching for Robert with increasing confidence, sleeping through the night in his crib rather than requiring constant contact with Olivia. On the morning of their court appearance, Robert helped Olivia select an outfit from the new clothes Catherine had purchased. The child had initially been overwhelmed by having multiple options after months of neglect under Cassandra's care. What if the judge says no? Olivia asked suddenly as Robert fastened the buttons on her cardigan. What if she doesn't let us stay with you? The fear in her voice pierced Robert's heart. Judge Harmon wants what's best for you and Lucas, and I believe she sees that we belong together. But what if she doesn't? Olivia persisted, her anxiety manifesting in the way she twisted the fabric of her skirt. Robert knelt to her level, gently taking her hands in his. Then we fight. We appeal. We do whatever it takes. But Olivia, I promise you this, no matter what happens in that courtroom today, you and Lucas will never be alone again. I will always be there for you, even if I have to move mountains to make it happen. The solemnity of his promise seemed to reassure her. She nodded once, squeezing his fingers with surprising strength. We'll fight together, she said, her young voice steady with conviction. The courthouse was quieter than their previous visits, Catherine having arranged for them to enter through a private entrance to avoid media attention. Judge Harmon's chambers were warm and less intimidating than the formal courtroom, with bookshelves lining the walls and photographs of her family displayed on her desk. Please sit down, she invited, her usual severity tempered with kindness as she observed Lucas sleeping in Robert's arms and Olivia pressed close to his side. The meeting was deliberately informal, designed to put the children at ease. Judge Harmon asked Olivia simple questions about her time with Robert, whether she felt safe, if she had everything she needed, what they did together each day. The child answered honestly, describing their new routines, the stories Robert read, how he was learning to cook simple meals for them. He burned the toast this morning, Olivia confided, a hint of a smile touching her lips. But he's getting better. Judge Harmon's eyes crinkled with amusement. Learning new skills takes time, she agreed before turning more serious. Olivia, do you understand what adoption means? The child nodded solemnly. It means Robert would be our dad forever, legally. That's right. And is that what you want? Olivia glanced up at Robert, then back to the judge. Yes, my first daddy can't come back, but he would want us to have a family. Robert promised to tell us stories about him so we won't forget. The judge's expression softened further. That's very important, isn't it? To remember the people we love, even after they're gone. Robert understands because his little boy died too, Olivia explained with the straightforward logic of childhood. So he knows how to help when we're sad about daddy. Something in the judge's eyes shifted at this simple statement, a recognition of the unique bond forming between this man and these children, forged in shared grief, yet focused on building a future. She turned her attention to Robert. The home study has been completed and approved. Dr. Chen has submitted her psychological assessment, which strongly favors this placement. The financial trustee reports that provisions for the children's inheritance have been properly established. She paused, studying him intently. Is there anything else you wish to add before I make my determination? Robert shifted Lucas gently in his arms, the baby stirring slightly before settling back to sleep. Only this, Your Honor. When I first brought these children into my home, I thought I was fulfilling a promise to their father. What I didn't realize was how much they would change me, heal me. I'm asking for the privilege of raising Olivia and Lucas not only because they need a father, but because I need them. Their courage, their resilience, their capacity for joy despite everything they've endured. Judge Harmon nodded slowly, then opened a folder on her desk and removed several documents. Based on all evidence presented and in consideration of the extraordinary circumstances surrounding this case, I am approving the petition for adoption of Olivia and Lucas Mitchell by Robert Hughes, effective immediately. She signed the documents with a flourish, then extended her hand to Olivia. Congratulations, Olivia. You and your brother have a forever home now. The child's eyes widened, darting between the judge and Robert as the full impact of the decision registered. Really? It's done? It's done, Judge Harmon confirmed. Mr. Hughes is now legally your father. Olivia remained still for a moment, processing this information. Then, with a small cry that seemed to contain all the pent-up emotion of the past months, she threw her arms around Robert's waist, burying her face against him. We have a family again, she whispered, her voice muffled against his coat. Robert bent awkwardly, balancing Lucas while embracing Olivia with his free arm. Yes, sweetheart, we're a family now. The first snow of February was falling as they left the courthouse, fat flakes drifting lazily from a pearl gray sky. Robert carried Lucas, while Olivia walked beside him, her hand firmly clasped in his. Catherine followed a few steps behind, allowing them this moment of privacy despite the legal details still requiring attention. Where are we going now? Olivia asked, tilting her face up to catch snowflakes on her eyelashes, a gesture of childish delight that Robert had never seen from her before. Home, he answered simply. Not to the temporary lake house or his sterile penthouse, but to the new house he had purchased in a quiet suburb, a spacious colonial with a fenced yard, rooms for each child, and a sunny studio where Olivia could pursue her art. It wasn't the Mitchell mansion, but it had something more valuable, the potential to become a real home filled with love and new memories. As they approached the car, Olivia tugged gently on Robert's hand. Can we do something first? Before we go home? Of course. What would you like to do? Can we go see Daddy at the cemetery to tell him about today? The request caught Robert by surprise, but he recognized its importance. Yes, we can do that. The cemetery was peaceful under its blanket of fresh snow, the silence broken only by the soft crunch of their footsteps along the shoveled path. Michael Mitchell's grave was marked by a simple granite headstone, the earth still showing signs of recent disturbance. Olivia approached the grave with quiet dignity, pulling a folded paper from her coat pocket, one of her drawings. She knelt in the snow, carefully placing the drawing against the headstone, weighing it down with a small stone. "Hi, Daddy," she began softly. "I brought Lucas to see you. And Robert, too. He's taking care of us now, just like you asked him to." Robert stood a few steps back, giving her space while remaining close enough to offer support. Lucas stirred in his arms, blinking sleepily at the white landscape. "The judge said Robert can be our dad now," Olivia continued, her voice stronger. "But I told her we won't forget you. Robert's going to tell us stories about when you were younger, and I'm going to keep all your pictures so Lucas knows what you looked like when he gets bigger." She paused, brushing snow from the top of the headstone in a gesture of tenderness that brought a lump to Robert's throat. "I think you'd like our new house. It has a big yard and trees for climbing when I'm older. Lucas is talking more now. He can say Baba and no." A smile flickered across her face. "He says no go a lot." Robert watched as Olivia communed with her father's memory, struck by the resilience of this remarkable child who had endured so much yet retained her capacity for love. When she finally stood and returned to his side, her expression was peaceful rather than sorrowful. "I think Daddy's happy we're with you," she said with the certainty of childhood. "I think so too," Robert agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "Your father was my best friend. Having you and Lucas in my life feels like a part of him is still with me." They stood together for a moment longer, the falling snow creating a cocoon of stillness around them. Then Olivia slipped her hand back into Robert's, and they turned toward the future that awaited them. The house felt immediately right as they pulled into the driveway, neither too grand nor too modest, with warm lights glowing from windows that promised comfort within. Catherine had arranged for Sarah Peterson and several volunteers to prepare the space, ensuring everything was ready for their arrival. As Robert helped Olivia from the car, the front door opened, revealing Sarah framed in the golden light from the entryway. Behind her, a banner hung across the foyer. "Welcome home, Hughes family." Olivia's mouth formed a perfect O of surprise. "Is this really all ours?" "All ours," Robert confirmed, leading her up the front steps. "Would you like to explore?" The next hour passed in a flurry of discovery as Olivia investigated every room, her excitement growing with each new revelation. Her bedroom had been painted the soft blue she'd mentioned liking, with bookshelves already filled with children's classics and a desk positioned beneath the window for her drawing. Lucas's nursery adjoined through a connecting door, decorated in gentle greens and yellows with a handcrafted crib and rocking chair. But it was the family room that brought Olivia to stunned silence. There, above the fireplace, hung a portrait of Michael Mitchell, a candid photograph enlarged and beautifully framed, showing him laughing with Olivia as an infant in his arms. "So we always remember," Robert explained gently, setting Lucas down in the play area Sarah had prepared. "And there's room for more photographs as we make new memories together." Olivia stood very still, absorbing this tangible proof that her past would not be erased, that her father would remain honored in their new life. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady with newfound security. "Can I put my drawing there too? The one of our new family?" "Absolutely." Robert knelt beside her. "This is your home, Olivia. You and Lucas can help decide how we make it ours." That evening, after Lucas had been settled into his new crib and Olivia was preparing for bed, Robert found himself standing in the doorway of his son David's bedroom, or rather, the room that would have been David's had their family's trajectory not been so violently altered years ago. He had instructed the moving company to bring the carefully preserved boxes from storage. David's books, his model airplanes, the baseball glove that had never been broken in. Not to create a shrine, but to integrate these precious memories into their new home. "Is this David's stuff?" Robert turned to find Olivia beside him, her hair damp from her bath, dressed in new pajamas patterned with stars. "Yes," he answered honestly. "I've kept it all these years." Olivia studied the boxes thoughtfully. "Maybe Lucas would like the airplanes when he's bigger, and I could read some of David's books." The suggestion, offered with such innocent generosity, filled Robert's heart to overflowing. "I think David would like that very much." She nodded, satisfied with this solution. "It's sad when people go away forever, but it helps to share the things they loved." "Yes, it does," Robert agreed, once again struck by the wisdom housed in this young soul. Later, after stories had been read and goodnights exchanged, Robert settled into the armchair in his new study, a glass of scotch in hand. The events of recent weeks played through his mind like scenes from a film. The children huddled in the snow, the hospital room, the judge's chambers, the cemetery, and finally this house slowly transforming into a home. The path forward would not be easy. There would be nightmares to soothe, questions to answer, wounds both visible and invisible to heal. The children would need time and patience to fully trust that this new security was permanent. Robert himself was still learning the rhythms of fatherhood, making mistakes and adjustments daily. Yet as he gazed out at the snow-covered landscape, a profound sense of rightness settled over him. From the deepest tragedy had come an unexpected blessing, a second chance at the family he had lost, and the opportunity to provide the same for two children who had lost everything. Spring would come eventually, melting the snow and bringing new growth. And when it did, the Hughes family would plant a garden together, perhaps with snowdrops, those resilient flowers that push through winter's hardest crusts to reach the light. Robert raised his glass in a silent toast. To Michael, whose friendship had changed the course of his life. To David, whose memory remained a guiding star. And to Olivia and Lucas, whose presence had reawakened his capacity for love and hope. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing their new home in pristine white, a clean page upon which their story as a family was just beginning to be written.